On the front lines, every decision matters. That's why Intel partnered with EdgeRunner AI to bring AI where and when our troops need it most. In the field, in real time. EdgeRunner's secure, domain-specific language model is optimized to run on Intel-powered devices, and it's built on Intel's 50-year commitment to advanced manufacturing right here on American soil. That's the power of Intel Inside. See what we can build together at intel.com/USAI.
I'm Ben Watson, and welcome to Defense One Radio. Jovita Neliupšienė is the European Union's ambassador to the United States. Ambassador, welcome to Defense One Radio.
Hello.
So, the European Union has begun work on an almost $1 trillion plan to buy new weapons and build up its defense industrial base. This plan is called Readiness 2030. And you have described it as a once-in-a-generation surge in European defense. Now, to help set the stage here, what is Europe's defense industrial base doing especially well on its own? Like, what are its strengths at the moment?
Well, first of all, I think that the most important question which we are solving right now and what we have to answer for ourselves is why we are investing in our defense capabilities. First of all, we have an existential threat. Russia's war, illegal invasion in Ukraine, actually, probably it's not really the bell ringing, it's a bell toll for everyone, and a long overdue wake-up call that we have not only to invest in our own capabilities and have enough capabilities to defend ourselves, but as well to help our neighbors, our immediate neighbors, European country, which is illegally attacked. Another element of that is, of course, most of the European countries, European Union countries, are actually members of NATO, and we have to stick to our commitment. Up till this year, it was 2%. Now it's 5%, or as we call 3.5 and 1.5. So that means we have to start spending. And you can ask what the EU is doing. European Union is an economic and trade organization. We have major and most important tools in order to promote and boost defense industry. So on top of what the nation countries like members of NATO is going to spend for their national security, we are going to spend extra 150 billion to ramp up our defense industry, be it, the joint procurements for air defense, be it investment in critical infrastructure, be it, drone wall, and, anything what the member states would be more equipped to do if they do together. So I do believe that this is where we are heading. And you rightly note the plan which we are implementing. It's called Readiness 2030. And hopefully, when we reach that milestone, we will be not only stronger, better equipped, but we will be safer in Europe's continent, and I think globally, because it will be our contribution to the transatlantic security as well.
It's interesting. You named a couple of things there that, of course, are big priorities, obviously, in light of this Ukraine invasion. I think number one, as you pointed out, air defense. You mentioned, of course, a sort of a drone wall. That is a big issue, obviously, this last month or so. During a speech in July, you had noted European countries are spending around 40% of their national defense money in the United States. You kind of got into it a moment ago, but I'm wondering, where is the EU hoping to make big strides or progress for its defense industry in the months ahead? And why do you think U.S. defense firms ought to pay close attention to these wider developments?
Well, look, we are speaking about almost 1 trillion of US dollars, which will be spent in Europe for defense within upcoming 3 to 5 years. That's a huge amount. I think that due to some account, we will be one of the biggest defense investor in our defense industry, if you wish, globally. for that period. And I think that it's very clear that if we think about innovative solutions, if we think about co-production in Europe, if we think in kind of a moving faster than usual, I think that it's for us it's extremely important to have US and our as the main and the most important transatlantic partner in security on board in all those projects. And as you mentioned, is already now European countries actually are spending around 40% of their national defense money in the United States. But if we look, for example, to our expenditure for Ukraine, this number actually amounts even more than 50 or 53% to be more precise. I think that's actually really showcase how close allies we are. And of course, a significant amount of this investment opportunities, according to Readiness 2030, will be open to U.S. companies. Major European purchases of for example, new anti-drone systems, new air defense or missile defense capabilities, and the most powerful cyber warfare systems are on the horizon, so to say, and alongside we will have to purchase AI and quantum computing system. All those technologies we are developing either together or are developed in the United States. So you would not escape cooperating with us. And I think that, honestly, we haven't seen a collective investment of this kind of magnitude in Europe and globally. So we want to have the best, and in order to protect and to deter our enemies.
I think within this context, it's helpful to point out, as Ivo Dalder, former U.S. ambassador to NATO, wrote in Politico today. He said, "Europe is at war with Russia, whether it likes it or not." And that, of course, as you pointed out in our first question, is kind of the broader context with all of this. You've been sanctioned by Russia since 2015, is that correct?
Yes. Yes, I think that it's proof that I was working for Lithuanian government at that moment. It proved that we were actually right in a way that we have decoupled from the Russian energy resources to invest more. We introduced compulsory military training at that moment, and we actually bumped our defense spending to 2%. The Russians didn't like that. I don't know why.
Well, it is sort of seen as a certain badge of honor to certain folks anyway. I know there's been a couple journalism outfits that have gotten that. I think Bellingcat might be the more higher profile. And they, of course, have done a lot of work in holding Russia accountable. So there is a kind of badge of honor, in my opinion, with that. Now, there's been a trend that we have noticed in our Defense One newsroom, and we're not the only ones to notice this, of course, but the current U.S. administration has spent most of its first 8 months in office turning the country's attention away from the big foreign policy concerns of the recent past, like China and Russia, saying their priority is a kind of isolationist focus on the homeland above all else. Now, this week, the president spoke to the UN. Almost immediately after, he seemed to kind of wash his hands of any hope toward ending Russia's Ukraine invasion. For us at Defense One, it's kind of fascinating because there are several U.S. weapons systems that were essentially sold with that China and Russia focus in mind. But now that China and Russia, the focus is wavering with the White House, it's a different sort of tune, at least temporarily. Europe, of course, and Lithuania, where you were born, they're much closer to Russia than we are here in the States. And even my neighbors in my neighborhood are kind of, oftentimes I've had discussions with them kind of reiterating points about why Ukraine matters. What have you found yourself telling people who may waver or seem indifferent towards the threat to Europe posed by Vladimir Putin still today? Like, what do you say on a kind of like an ordinary human-to-human level? Granted, our audience is policy wonks in D.C. We all still have family members as well. How does this kind of touch your life, I'm wondering?
Well, first of all, I think that, what we see happening in Ukraine and Russia's attack on Ukrainian territory, Ukrainian border, and if you listen what Russian leadership is saying at the moment, that they that they want to change the regime, that they want to that the Soviet Union collapse was a geopolitical tragedy, that Russia has some kind of the natural interests behind its or beyond its borders. I think that all those claims should be very tentatively listened, because it does not apply only to Ukraine. I think that there is an ambition which actually goes beyond and further on Ukraine. We can talk about, what was happening in the last week in NATO countries like Estonia, Denmark, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, and the list is getting longer. Security always cost, and safety of people as well cost. And I think investing in our security right now is extremely important, because they're waiting for someone to come and tell us how we should live, what kind of borders to draw, and what kind of the principles our life should be led. Well, honestly, I don't want to live in Russian-led world, and I don't want probably to live in China-led world. I want to live in the democratic world where we choose what to believe, choose what to say, and choose what our values are. This is not only about Ukraine. Those violations of their most important international principles actually can be easily used and multiplied by actors like China, who is actually supporting Russia by providing, economic assistance, selling components to them, by Iran building drones in Russia, which actually flies over NATO countries and threatens them, or by North Korea, which actually sends soldiers to fight on behalf of Russia against Ukraine. I think we see those bad guys actually aligning. Shouldn't we ally ourselves?
Yeah, that's fair. I am curious, sort of as well. I mean, I just think about this negotiation process that the president has been trying to engage Russia with, not terribly successfully. I think it is finally kind of more concretely emerging. I'm wondering, what if negotiations with the Russians, which it seems like they've basically only yielded about prisoner exchanges or so with Ukraine, what is the negotiation process that has happened so far? What's it revealed or suggested to you in terms of Europe's future?
Look, I think that you would not find any European, and in particular any Ukrainian, who would not support the peace process and peace negotiations. I think that everyone who is close geographically to the Russia's war in Ukraine stands behind President's interest to end the war and to stop killing. I think that goes without saying. Can we trust the partner or the side which actually waged the war against its neighbor? Can we believe, if they promise something, that they will keep their word? Well, coming from where I'm coming from, the Baltic country, I haven't experienced that in my entire life, and we haven't experienced that in 1,000 years of history. So I think that we have to talk, but we have to be sure that they experience the biggest pressure and the maximum pressure on their economy, on and the pushback that they have to stop this war. It's not that they will go with the goodwill and they will follow through.
Well, my last question is kind of a big picture consideration, because there's, of course, in America, there's pendulum, very much so, kind of, that swings back and forth. We had Obama, bit of an internationalist in a way, but didn't want to have too many wars, kind of inherited a few. It goes over to Trump, kind of an anti-Obama. Then we get a Biden, for a few years, and now we got Trump again. I, as a journalist, have kind of found myself, I've been watching defense news on a day-to-day basis for more than a decade now. And it has increasingly, dawned on me that we have to kind of remind folks, our audiences, of important things. We have to kind of rewrite an explainer that maybe we explained 4 or 5 years ago. We need to remind our audience of why this is important or why that is important. Have you found yourself over the last few years sort of thinking or ruminating about that kind of almost responsibility of letting those in our lives and those around us and even those in our professional circle, what is important and why is it important? Because if we just stay quiet, people will forget. Is this something that you have felt in an intimate way in your job? I mean, your job is you are an ambassador and you had a foot in journalism in your past. I imagine these are ideas that sort of have maybe occurred to you, even if perhaps you didn't, articulate it or put words on it.
Well, thanks for the question. I was born in Soviet Union. I was born and I lived together with my parents and grandparents for some time. They would not let us to go to the church. We could not light the Christmas tree during the Christmas period because it was considered too religious. There would be no actually, free media or that I can express myself as a teenager, or that my parents could travel anywhere. We were closed. Our borders was closed. You have to put a huge effort in general to connect, for example, to the FM radio and to listen what actually Voice of America has to say for us. And you have actually, like, honestly, you could have pair of jeans only in the black market because it was considered as their symbol of freedom. And I'm not even speaking about Coke or Rolling Stones, which were forbidden. This is the world and the alternative I don't want to live again, and I definitely don't want my teenager, who is right now 13-year-old, to live in. I think that it actually we have to remind ourselves that neither democracy, neither freedom, neither our choices which we make, like to have a multiple 100 different opinions on the things which we think important or less important in our lives, that it actually is very fragile, and we have to put an effort to keep it and to preserve. It's not given. This is my message, that it actually can be absolutely different. And this is what actually Ukrainians are fighting for. And I can assure they will fight with their forks and their knives to make sure that they as a nation and as a country survive.
Jovita Neliupšienė is the EU's ambassador to the United States. Ambassador, thank you again so much for speaking with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, that's it for us this episode. Thanks for listening. And until next time.
On the front lines, every decision matters. That's why Intel partnered with EdgeRunner AI to bring AI where and when our troops need it most. In the field, in real time. EdgeRunner's secure, domain-specific language model is optimized to run on Intel-powered devices, and it's built on Intel's 50-year commitment to advanced manufacturing right here on American soil. That's the power of Intel Inside. See what we can build together at intel.com/USAI.